everybody. Welcome back to the podcast, my first season. My name is Greg, and we have a very, very special guest today who came highly recommended to me from another ex-G.O. who said, you better get this gentleman on the show as soon as possible. So I reached out to him. He agreed. His first season was in Club Med Sandpiper in April of 1989 as a Bar G.O. He is from Toronto, but is now living in Arizona, and he promised he would tell me all about that story. So without further ado, everyone, please help me welcome to the show, Scott. Hey, Scott, how are you, sir?
I'm great, Greg. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. My pleasure that you accepted my kind offer. So I'm glad that you were able to do this today, because I think yours is the first time where we spoke and then we immediately did the interview and set up a time the same day. That never happens. I've been rescheduling with people for about 8 months now, if you can believe it. Like just hasn't gotten together. So boy, do I really appreciate the heck out of you for doing this today.
Nothing like living in the moment.
Which is, yes, we are recording this on Canadian Thanksgiving Day. So I guess you having dual citizenship of sorts or celebrating 2 days. I think you know how the show works. If you take me back, I think you told me you were living in Toronto, and is that where you first heard about Club Med?
No, actually. I mean, yeah, I grew up in Toronto. I was born in the States, but parents, one was American, one was Canadian. So had me in the States, went back to Toronto, grew up there, went to college in the US. I played club hockey at Ohio State.
Oh, really?
And went on to after graduation, live in California, and didn't know what I wanted to do after college. So started bartending in a nightclub, basically in Oakland, California, a big nightclub. And one day, one of the other bartenders came in and told me about Club Med, was interviewing for bartenders and joked about being bartenders in the Caribbean. And I went on and filled everything out. And the next thing I knew, I got a letter, because this was before email and cell phones and text messages and all that. I got a letter in the mail saying, we'd like to interview you. There's group interviews at Universal Studios, Hollywood in LA. And
kidding. They did the interviews at Universal Studios?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And I think it was the Hilton Hotel. And so I had my college roommate for most of my time there at Ohio State was living in LA at the time. He was a musician. And so I thought, you know what, I'll go down and do the interview. It was on a Friday, and hang out with him for the weekend and go watch his band play and stuff like that. So it took off from there.
Okay. 2 questions. So where did you learn to become a beverage concoctionist? Fancy word for bartender. Now, did you take courses, or you just knew how to mix drinks naturally?
Yeah, no. Well, yeah, I mean, there was a little bit of self-exploration, if you will, as growing up.
At Ohio State?
Yes, at Ohio State, and a little prior to Ohio State. But no, when I got to Ohio State, I stopped playing hockey my senior year because I was pretty beat up. And one of the guys that I knew at college had just graduated, and he opened a bar up on the main street. And he basically came up to a few of us and said, you know, I want you guys to bartend for me, mainly because I trust you. And, you know, we all said, we don't really know how to bartend. And he's like, well, can you open a beer? Can you pour a shot? And we said, yeah. And he said, well, that's basically all it is at college. So I started bartending there for him, because at that time, Ohio was 19 to drink. That's how old I am. And so the bars were really busy. And so, so I started bartending for him, just, you know, weekends and stuff like that while I was during my senior year. And it was just a lot of fun to do. And I learned everything from him and some of the other bartenders and stuff like that.
Now, at your interview, was this just a standard like one-on-one interview? I think back then there wasn't really much of what they get nowadays, where they throw you on stage, ask you to do some dancing or tell some jokes. So you don't have to tell any jokes. Okay.
No, God, no, there was absolutely no dancing or no singing or joking or anything like that. Let me preface. So I drove down from San Francisco to LA and got to the Hilton, and I got there a little bit early. I don't remember what time the interview was, but I remember it being about an hour early. So I went into the Hilton, and I went into the bar, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to calm my nerves a little bit and just have a cocktail. So I sat down at the bar, and again, this is kind of showing my age. but there was a man sitting next to me with a bald head, and he turned and looked at me and he said, "Hi, how you doing?" And I looked at him, and as a kid, I grew up watching a show called Kojack with a guy named Telly Savalas.
That's right.
Yeah, it was Telly Savalas.
Who loves you, baby?
Yeah, exactly. There you go. And so, yeah, so he looked at me and we just started chatting, and I told him about the interview and everything like that. And he was just really nice and, wished me luck, and off I went, kind of thing. But that was kind of I don't know. I felt like that was the start of a good day, kind of thing. I thought that this is pretty cool. So anyways, long story short, walked into the interview. It was supposed to be a group interview. There was about 50 or 60 of us in a ballroom, and small ballroom. And someone came up, I can't remember who it was, and said, okay, we're gonna meet with all of you individually for a bit, and I'm gonna give you a speech on what Club Med's all about. No one's gonna get hired today. We're just gonna meet everybody, and we'll take it from there and contact you afterwards. Okay, great. And so the person went through the speech on what Club Med was and how it started and the history and everything and all about. And honestly, I knew nothing about Club Med. Thought, okay, this sounds cool. And then I got called in to a room, and I can't remember the gentleman's name now, but he was from the Paris office. And from growing up in Toronto, I had 12 years of French. And so back then, I actually could understand and speak French fairly well. And he was on the phone. He made some comment to somebody on the phone, and I don't know, it made me react. And when he got off the phone, he looked at me and he said to me, "Do you understand French?" And I said, "Yeah." And so I explained my background to him, and he just looked at me square in the eye and he said, "Yeah, and you're a bartender? Yeah, we need you in Sandpiper in about 2 weeks." And I'm like, "What?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said to him, "I thought nobody was getting hired." And he's like, "Yeah, no, you're kind of a unique person. You have an American passport, Canadian working papers, you can speak French, you can speak English, you know how to bartend. Yeah, we need you there now." And I said, "Well, I got to go home and I got to, wrap things up and do this." But I said, "Sure, great." And so before I knew it, I mean, this was in March of '89. I think it was the first week of April, I was in Sandpiper.
All right, your story keeps raising questions. So did you learn French in Toronto?
Yeah. Back then in Toronto, it was mandatory to have French all the way through 11th grade.
Okay.
And I took it in 12th grade just because, if you will. I mean, I don't know, it just seemed like the natural thing to do.
Okay.
So,
now, prior to him immediately offering you a job, in your head, did you have visions of the West Indies and Bahamas? And because I always ask, people, especially Americans, their first reaction to like, I'm going to travel the world, and they're sent to their own country. Did you have any of these notions of Tahiti in your head, or you were just happy to work anywhere?
I was happy. I was, hoping to work in like the Bahamas or Jamaica or something like that. Again, I didn't know anything about Club Med, so I didn't know where they were. Or anything like that. I'd been to Florida on vacation a few times, but my family grew up, we didn't have a lot of money, so we didn't do much traveling or anything like that. And so I guess I was hoping for an island or a sandy beach. When I got the notification I was going to Sandpiper, I'm like, oh well, Florida's kind of cool. And then I kind of remember trying to figure out where it was, and I'm like, okay, we're not even on the beach, we're on a river. So I was a little taken back, but at the same time, it was going to be more fun bartending in Florida than it was in Oakland. So I thought, what the heck? And I'm an only child, so if you will, it's easy for me to pick up and move around and stuff like that. So I thought, we'll give it a shot and see where it leads.
How much details did because we all have that person that told us about Club Med, including me, but were details sketchy from this person? Like, did he know a lot? Like, did he tell you you're going to work 7 days a week and no day off and 12 hours a day or more? He didn't say anything. Okay.
No. I mean, like, if you will, my Club Med experience started when they sent me my flight itinerary.
Oh boy, let me guess. They bounced you around to every airport on the Eastern Seaboard before you got to Florida, right?
I took off from San Francisco. It was like 1:00 in the afternoon on a Friday. And I didn't get into Sandpiper by the time they picked me up at the airport, the other GOs picked me up at the airport and brought me up. It was about 6:00 Saturday night because they were just starting the welcome cocktail party that was around the pool. Okay. So yeah, I was on planes for more than 24 hours.
It's almost like you went to Tahiti, really, but
yeah,
you just didn't leave the continental USA. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. Okay. I think I had 3 layovers.
Oh God. Okay.
Yeah. They got me there.
Yeah. Well, I share your pain. I've had those. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you get there. So are you, your first night, are you taking it all in? Are you like overwhelmed, or are you like, I'm okay. This is easy.
They literally put me right to work. Like I said, they were shorthanded bartenders.
Classic.
And I literally, they picked me up at the airport. We drove in, and I took my bags to my room, and then within 2 seconds of me entering the room, someone was banging on my door saying, "We need you down, helping us with the cocktail party." So I went right to work for the cocktail party. So we finished the cocktail party, grabbed a bite to eat, and then they were doing Grease that night, the show. Linda, I can't remember Linda's last name now, but she was the choreographer. She grabbed me and said, "We need extras for Grease. You're going to be on stage tonight."
Oh, come on. This is still your first night?
This is within the first 3 hours.
My God. And technically, Bar G.Os don't really have to do shows. Boy, they really pounced on you.
Yeah, well, so there was only, roughly at Sandpiper at that time, there was about 100 GOs, and I was one of 6 male GOs. So, and then there was the chief of sports, Lionel Benzoni, and the chief of village, Jean-Luc. So there was 8 males in the village.
Okay.
So that's why I was grabbed right away, is because they need to make it look like it wasn't an all-girls high school during Grease. They needed a few boys on the stage.
Yeah. You needed some actual T-birds, right?
Yeah, it was that was it pretty much. And so they grabbed me and threw me on stage. And again, if you will, I'm an old hockey player that had, I wasn't the kid in drama or anything like that in high school. I'd never been on stage in my life. So I just kind of went with it. I had a couple cocktails to loosen me up and jumped on stage, and Linda told me what to do. And so I kind of stood in the background and danced around, and everything went fine. Okay. So yeah.
It sounds similar to my stories. Looking back, you probably, after the amount of flying you did, you must have been exhausted. Mm-hmm. You probably would have liked to have gone to bed early and then, get was refreshed. But aren't you glad now? Like, because this is a better story, right? They immediately threw you at the bar, and then you got plucked to be in the show on the same night. In a way, on your way, you're probably happy that it happened that way, right? Because it's a much better story, right?
Oh, definitely. Well, it's kind of one of those things where if somebody had come up and said, "Who wants to volunteer and be on stage?" I would have never lifted my hand, not because I was afraid, but it's something I'd just never done. Mm-hmm. I was always in sports. I was always playing sports. I was that guy, if you will. I wasn't on that other side of the coin. So yeah, with Linda doing that, honestly, it kind of broke the ice for me without me having to make a decision, which was great. And then to your point about Bar G.Os not being in shows, well, again, since there was only a few guys in the village, I don't know if it was Linda or Jean-Luc, the chief of village, that basically went to my chief of bar and said, "Yeah, he's going to work day bar because he's got to be in the shows." Oh, no. And again, I didn't really mind that. So I ended up, if you will, I would open the bar every day at 8:00 and work till about 4. And then the night bartenders would come on, and then I would get off and, do shows and stuff like that. So it definitely integrated me into the village more right from the start.
I never experienced that. I've never even heard of a village being that lopsided in terms of male to female ratio. I guess in your subsequent seasons, you've never saw that again, right? It was always almost an even mix, right?
Yeah. A lot of times actually, like, I went on to Cancun after that, and I'd say that was more probably 75% male, 25% female. St. Lucia, where I went after that, was pretty about 50-50, and same thing with Eleuthera. So I don't know why Sandpiper was like that. I don't think there was any grand scheme. I think it was just they were bringing people in and dropping them in the village. And I remember that there was visa requirements. It had something to do, because I'd asked somebody and somebody said it has to do with being the villages in the States and work visas. And I guess there was only so many. And so, because most of the people that worked there were Americans.
Yes.
There was a few European GOs and a few Canadians, but there was limitations.
Did you experience any kind of culture shock or Club Med culture shock when you arrived? I mean, were there any Europeans there that week that you arrived? Did anything like take you aback a bit?
Yeah, I mean, we had, well, again, being Sandpiper, Florida, we had a lot of people that came through pretty steadily from the Paris office. First of all, a lot of executives from Club Med back then, never the Trigonos, but everybody else, if you will, up the chain, and a lot of other chief villages that would come between their villages and would stop there. And so, being that I worked the day bar too, if you will, it kind of opened up a lot of meetings for me and connections. I got to meet all these people. At first, if you will, I was kind of dismissed a little bit because everyone just assumed I was American and didn't speak French. I had a couple of times where people made comments, and again, I reacted and either answered in French or gave them kind of a look, if you will. And yeah, and so then all of a sudden it was like, oh, he speaks French, and he knows how to pour Ricard and stuff like that. So, so then all of a sudden it made the job more interesting and enjoyable. We also had a lot of Japanese GMs that came through as they wanted to go to Disneyland and Epcot. And we had, I want to say, 3 dedicated Japanese GOs that would go with them as interpreters. And it was a lot of honeymoon parties, Japanese parties that would come. So, and they would always come in and into the bar in the morning. And again, being a little bit sheltered growing up, they would come in and they'd walk in and they'd look at me and they'd yell, Ohio. And
nice.
So, being that I played hockey for Ohio State, I thought, wow, that's kind of cool. They're yelling Ohio at me.
They're big fans.
Not understanding. They were saying like, welcome, good morning, whatever kind of thing. Yeah.
That's
So
right.
I made a fool of myself. I said that to somebody. I said, that's so nice that they all come in and cheer for Ohio. And they laughed at me and they said, you're an idiot. And they're not saying Ohio.
Well, they probably weren't Michigan fans anyway, right?
No, I don't think. But yeah, like I said, I got to meet a lot of people, as well as if you will, the typical GMs. But I got exposed to a lot more people in general because of that bar. So it was good.
Did you have time? I mean, once you settled in, did you have time to learn any of the sports there, or I don't know, do water ski? Did you have any time to do that, or you're just constantly setting up for one big cocktail? And
no, I was. I mean, I even to this day afterwards in like my professional career, I've always described myself as a jack of trades. I grew up again going to lakes north of Toronto and water skiing with friends and stuff like that. So I knew how to ski. And my roommate actually was a guy named John, and John was chief of water ski. And so he grabbed onto me real fast and put me in the water ski shows. So I did the water ski shows there. And every now and then I'd get some time off. I mean, back then it was pretty standard that you work 7 days a week and, right through your whole season. But again, if I was needed somewhere else, we had a couple local they weren't technically local. They were from Haiti that could bartend. And so every now and then, if they needed me somewhere else, I might have to jump out of the bar for an hour or two and go down to the ski docks or something like that. So, or circus. I did circus a lot too.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. You did it all right. That was a
Pretty much,
pretty packed first season. I guess Bastille Day is coming around on July 14. Did you know? I guess you had some pretty big preparations there. Did you know what Bastille Day was, or just?
Nope. Didn't
Okay.
know what Bastille Day was. Had no idea. I mean, July 4th, obviously coming up first.
Yep.
That was the big one. Bastille Day for us that year. Well before Bastille Day, the one GO I worked with, Heo Kirby, who was
so he was one of those 8 or 9 male GOs. Yes,
exactly.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. Heo and I were pretty good buddies. Heo is an iron worker and construction guy, and he decided he wanted to, with the help of the one maintenance engineer, build not a small replica, but a replica of the Eiffel Tower for Bastille Day.
Yeah, I've seen those photos. It was pretty big, eh?
Yeah, it was, I guess, I don't know, I'm going to say 40. I mean, he'll probably correct me, but 40 or 50 feet high. It's 4 or 5 stories high, at least.
Yeah.
And so we took to building. I mean, there was a number of us that just helped, if you will. And we built the mock-up of the Eiffel Tower. And then, I mean, that was a huge, well, we prepared for it for about a week. And then the whole day before and most of that night, we were up making drinks and things like that. We do a lot of drink prep work and put them in walk-in coolers and stuff like that, so we could just bring stuff out that day. But the logistics was tough too, because nothing was around the bar. It was out in the fields and over by Circus or down by the water and stuff like that. So by the water ski and sailing. So yeah, we were running around a lot that day.
Working at the main bar, did you ever come across celebrities or athletes that you recognized in the resort that first season, or
not
maybe...
in Sandpiper? No.
Oh, okay.
A buddy of mine played for the Chicago Bears, Sean Gale, and came down and visited me when I was in Cancun, and with one of the running backs from the Bears at the time. And, you know, other than that, I don't think I really, I mean, when we were in St. Lucia, MTV came down and did a big shoot and stuff like that. They were filming for MTV back then and stuff like that. If my St. Lucia team was kind of like, if you will, the legends, the old legends of Club Med now. It was Hammer, Keeley, and Jenner, and Hansel.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Winnie.
You were there that season then.
Yeah.
I've heard about this season a lot.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was a pretty crazy season. Like I said, it's like half the people went on to be chief of sports or chief of villages, or, you know, some of them are still working with the club. But yeah, everybody was there, and so MTV was there. I don't remember if there were celebrities there, but yeah, that was. I mean, a lot of the people I worked with, I mean, have stories of one of the divers I worked with, because I transitioned from bar to becoming a scuba G.O.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. So you became an instructor.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Winnie, the one instructor I worked with, took Richard Gere and who was he married to? The
Cindy
beautiful
Crawford.
mom. Cindy Crawford. He took them diving. So on a private dive, the three of them. So
okay. So
yeah.
what point? So is it when you left Sandpiper you wanted to become a scuba instructor?
No, I again, growing up in Toronto, you know, cement city, I wasn't even that good of a swimmer, to be honest with you. I went on to Cancun, and my roommate there was a guy named Brian Hilton, who was a scuba G.O. And when I went to Cancun, I ran the nightclub with Steve Riley.
Wow.
And Steve was the restaurant manager, and I ran the nightclub, and my hours were basically 10 at night to 6 in the morning. And so I would bartend and run the nightclub all night with Steve. And then I would get up in the morning, and Brian, well, one day he took me down to the docks, and we jumped in the water with all the equipment on. And Brian proceeded to rip off my mask and rip out my regulator. And I sat there on the about 8 feet of water looking at him underwater.
Yeah.
And then he demonstrated how to put it all back on, and I did. And we swam to the surface, and he's like, yeah, you're going to be an instructor. And I was like, okay. So teach me how.
So did you get what, I guess, assuming you're PADI certified?
Brian was NAUI. And
Yep.
so I did open water with Brian in Cancun and finished that. And then when I left Cancun, I went on to St. Lucia, and I didn't want to work behind the bar anymore. So I transitioned. MJ Foreman, who worked in the offices, had dated a friend of mine when I was at Ohio State. And so we had kind of a connection there. And so her and Rod said, what do you want to do if you go to St. Lucia? And I said, what kind of jobs do you got? And he's like, well, you could do kids club. I'm like, sure, sign me up. So I went to kids club.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh boy. Okay.
So I went to kids club, but they used me basically as the sports person for kids club. So I would go around. I didn't have a group. I would go around with all the groups and take them to the different, because I could do all the sports. I could water ski. I could do circus. The only thing I couldn't do was sailing. I never really learned how to sail, but I'd take the kids to all the different things, all the different sports, and go from there. So, and while I was doing that, we would we had like try scuba in the pool. We'd put these little tanks, these little pony tanks on the kids and swim them around. And I was just hanging out with the scuba guys a lot. And so, so they, if you will, took me under their wing, and I went from advanced diver all the way up to dive master in St. Lucia. And, basically transitioned to the dive team there. Officially, I was still kids club, but, and then from there went to Eleuthero, where I was on the snorkeling and the dive team.
Okay. Some story.
I've got a strange story.
Yeah.
I'm not the typical G.O, if you will.
Do you have any funny stories from your first season? And if not, any from your other seasons?
Funny stories.
Doesn't have to be funny. I just like them if they're funny. It could be, but it could be a horror show. Like Joel. Like Joel had one. Wasn't really funny. He told me his story about how the head of animation or lighting and sound for him just basically tore up his whole control box before the show and said, "Put it back together." So it could be something like that. That's not funny, but that's a hell of a story. Or did you do any typical first season G.O blunders? I don't know, embarrass yourself?
Well, I mean, I guess, for me, being on stage every night was a blunder for me, because I really had no clue of what, acting, if you will, or being on stage was all about. Gosh, I'm trying to think. I'm sorry. I'm drawing a little bit of a blank right now. I should have.
Oh no, we could come back.
Thought of something beforehand.
We could come back to that one.
Okay.
I have other questions. Your first season, was there any, being as how it was your first season, were there any managers or employees that stood out to you in a positive way that, I don't know, made it kind of a positive impact on you, or you admired their work ethic? Was there anyone like that first season?
Oh, definitely. I mean, well, honestly, our chief of village, Jean-Luc, I got to be good friends with, because I saw Jean-Luc less than I saw his wife and his kids, because his wife and kids would come into the restaurant during the day when I was bartending, and it was always kind of it seemed like a quieter time, and he just had the sweetest kids. And Jean-Luc and I, again, being not that many men, when there was some type of smaller act in the shows, Jean-Luc and I usually seem to be in them together. But Jean-Luc, he was just such a nice guy. I mean, he just made my whole experience more enjoyable there. The other guy I still joke around with today. I mean, we don't see each other a whole lot or talk a whole lot, but was Mark. Mark was the chief of boutique. I was kind of in couple dating one of the boutique ladies. So I used to see Mark every day too, because I'd run over to the boutique to see Lauren. But Mark just always made me laugh, and he ran a good business, if you will, and he's still in business to today. I believe he's got his shop in Florida called the Funky Monkey, and Mark was he just always made me laugh. I mean, that was the thing about him, and the way he handled his team was great and everything like that. So those were the two people that come to mind right away in Sandpiper. After that, probably the person that had one of the bigger impacts on me was Hansel Moss. I mean,
yes,
I still keep in touch with Hansel today, and I worked with him in St. Lucia, and being he was my chief of sports, he was very patient that a kids club person was doing all these sports and kind of joining the dive team unofficially and stuff like that. If he wouldn't have allowed it, I probably wouldn't have moved on as I did in Club Med. And then I went on to see him. I went on a vacation in San Salvador a number of years after that in the late 90s, and saw Hansel there as the photographer and stuff like that.
Yeah,
so.
I might have saw you there then.
Okay.
that's where I met Hansel in 96, but they sent me three times to Columbus Isle. So all the time with Hansel.
I love that village. It's just gorgeous.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
About how long did you stay? Like your first season, did you leave around like October, November, like the changeover, or did you stay for like another 6 months?
No, I was out of there just before Halloween. I mean,
oh really? Okay.
Back then it was still like 6 months, go home for a week or two, depending on, I don't know, what you had going on or where you wanted to go. Or some people just went to their next village, but 6 months there, went home. And then I was in Cancun like 2 weeks later. I was in Cancun in the beginning of November.
When you were in Sandpiper, did you fill out a dream sheet? Did they ask you where you wanted to go, or you just? Yeah. Okay, mm-hmm. So you chose Cancun and you got it.
Yeah, actually, I did. Yeah, that was the top three, and I don't know why I chose Cancun in retrospect. I don't remember why. I think I just put down I think I put down Cancun, Turks, and probably Martinique. I think I wanted to go to a single.
Yeah,
zone.
well, yeah, guessing by your three choices, Scott, I could probably figure it out. Okay.
Yeah. Well, we had times at Sandpiper during that season where I remember, especially when the village wasn't full, it was 300 or 400 people in the village. And honestly, it seemed like 300 were kids and 100 were adults. I mean, it was even on the schedule a few times. If you weren't in the show, the G.O.s had to attend the show because there was lulls during the season where there was no guests there.
That's right. Oh yeah, I remember those days. Yes.
Yeah, and the guests that were there had small kids, so they'd all go to bed. Yeah, so we'd all be, everybody'd be you'd be performing to your peers, if you will, which actually made me more nervous.
Yeah. Some of those hecklers can be pretty intense.
Mm-hmm.
Especially
your
roommate, you suck.
Mm-hmm. Well, we were always goofing around on stage and doing silly things to see if the audience would pick it up and things like that, or if you will, almost trying to take away from whoever was doing the main part, if you will. We were trying, like, I was never really a main part person. I was always in the background, but we'd always try to do something to get the audience to start watching us, if you will. So,
did you take a shine to Crazy Signs at all? Did you have to do those?
I can't say I was in love with Crazy Signs.
That's okay. No problem.
Again,
I wasn't either.
When you're in the show, you don't, you're on stage, so it's not like you can run away and hide.
That's right. Yeah.
And when like I said, when you're one of 6 guys and you're pretty good friends with the chief of village, he looks up and down the row, and if you don't, he would catch me right away.
Yeah, that's an easy head count in that village. Eh?
Exactly. So, but then when I went to Cancun, being that I was running the nightclub, I was setting the nightclub up during the show. And so I honestly, I don't think I ever did Crazy Signs in Cancun.
So you were still in, we're still in 1989 in Cancun then? If you got there.
1990 with Yay.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So did you miss the big Christmas, New Year's in Cancun? You arrived after that?
No, I was there right before. I got there the beginning of November.
Okay. Yeah.
So I was there for American Thanksgiving. I was there for Christmas, New Year's, all that.
Was it rough working during the holidays for you? It was first time away from home for Christmas?
I mean, it wasn't the first time. I mean, it was the first time, I guess you'd say, out of the US or Canada. It was a little rough, if you will. I mean, you're kind of isolated and, if you will, you're doing everything for everybody else to have a wonderful Christmas. And we had a Christmas dinner that was really nice with the staff that I still have good pictures from. But for the most part, it was like you had to put your Christmas and your feelings aside and just work, and that was it, kind of thing. So that was a little rough at first. So, but we got through it, and New Year's was fun. I mean, especially running the nightclub on New Year's Eve was fun, and and then went from there. So,
do you recall any, since you worked at the bar, to start? Do you have any favorite dumb questions that were asked? Because I kind of like the dumb questions that we used to get. So do you recall any kind of like, when will it stop raining, stuff of that nature? Do you any come to mind?
Sandpiper, not so many dumb questions, and even Cancun, not so many dumb questions. Where the dumb questions were so my chief of village in St. Lucia was Pierre. I don't remember Pierre's last name. He's the Canadian chief of village.
Was it Pierre Letelier Gagnon, I think? Maybe?
That's it.
Okay.
Bingo.
Okay.
That's probably why I can't remember it. I can't say it. But Pierre, when we would have our weekly meetings, Pierre actually had a contest where you could stand. It was in the theater, and you'd stand up, and everybody either say the funniest thing they saw that week or the dumbest question or whatever, and then the winner would get a bag of bar beats.
Really? That's a great idea.
Wow. It was a lot of fun, actually. I mean, he usually did it every week unless we were all in trouble and we were getting scolded for something, but that didn't happen too often. Usually they were very positive meetings, and so that at the end of the meeting, everybody'd stand up and give their spiel, and then he would throw the bag of bar beats to whoever he thought was the funniest.
Did you ever win one of those for the dumbest question of the week?
No, I never won. I never won there. What I did win in St. Lucia was Buster Douglas was fighting Mike Tyson.
That's right.
So the GMs actually put it together. They put together one of the square things like in football where you pick the round and 10-second intervals of each round, right? So the board was huge, honestly.
Well, I can imagine, yes, how much money was lost because we all know the outcome of that fight. So I guess people were betting big on Tyson, right?
Well, no, it wasn't one of those things where you bet on a fighter. It's where you pick so like with the Super Bowl, you know how you have the squares and you pick a square just blind and then they fill in what it is. Yeah. So it was the same thing. You picked squares blind and then they wrote Buster Douglas on the top and Tyson on the side, and then they put the rounds and the times. Anyways, I just threw, like, everybody was doing it, if you will. So I just threw in, we were all doing it with bar beads at the time because yellow bar beads were worth $1. So everyone would just throw in a yellow bar bead to buy a square. So I just bought a square. I got Buster Douglas. I think it was the third round and like 2 minutes in or something. Well, guess what? Buster Douglas knocked out Mike Tyson in the third round, 2 minutes in.
That's right.
So I won the jar of yellow bar beads.
Wow.
I think there was more than $1,000 worth of bar beads there. It was ridiculous. And here's the best part. It was like 2 weeks before I was to leave.
Needless to say, you probably bought a lot of drinks for your friends.
I just basically spilled them out in the nightclub in St. Lucia. I said, everybody have at it, get yourself drinks. And
nice.
So we had a really fun time, but that was one of the, I don't think I've ever been that lucky, honestly. That was one of the crazier things.
That's better than winning a lottery. Come on.
Oh, it was actually. We had so much fun, and we had fun with the GMs and stuff like that. St. Lucia was just a great village. I mean, not just the staff, and not to take away from Sandpiper, but we had a great team. We had a great chief of village, and the GMs that would come there, just, I don't know, they all had a lot of fun. I mean, even every now and then we'd get a group of travel agents that would show up thinking that St. Lucia was turquoise, and it wasn't.
Yeah.
And they would just hang out with us in the nightclub, and we'd all have fun. And it was a beautiful island. Everyone was relaxed, and so I mean, probably my best memories, honestly, are from St. Lucia.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, well, side note here, side question. I like to ask this question because it happens to me and a lot of other XGOs. Is ever, like today, do you ever like have a recurring dream where you're back at Club Med? Do you ever get this or not at all? You're working. You're not on vacation. You're working.
Right. Yeah. Not so much anymore. I mean, I can say that I had some serious withdrawals when I left Club Med. I mean, basically it was, when you were a G.O. back then, you were kind of like a rock star. And so, when you go back, I went back to San Francisco, you'd go to a bar with friends and, you'd have to show ID and nobody knew you and you had to use money. And, there was none of that, camaraderie, I guess you'd say. And so, yeah, for a while there, I really thought about just going back to work. And I still had a lot of friends that were still working for the club back then. But, now I just think of it fondly, honestly. And I'd love to, my daughter is turning 10 next year. And so the plan is to get her junior open water certified. And then from there, we'll probably go to, one of the villages eventually. I mean, when she'll start diving for a little while. And then when she gets a little bit older, maybe we'll take her to one of the Club Meds. But yeah.
Do you still dive?
I do actually. The crazy world we work in, literally, I just started a new job running a scuba store last week. Yeah.
Oh really?
Weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. You wouldn't think there's a lot of scuba diving in Phoenix, but actually there is.
Well, I was going to ask you, where in Arizona you're located. Okay. So
yeah, in Phoenix. So we do a lot of classes, and we have a lake close to us called Lake Pleasant. We do open water dives there. And then honestly, we just run a ton of trips out to California and the Caribbean.
What's the visibility like? Like how many feet is the visibility in this lake that you go?
0 to 3.
Okay, yeah.
Those are on the good days.
Sounds like Canada. Okay, that's
yeah.
I did my dive. Okay.
And it's cold. I mean, even though we're in Arizona, the water comparative, to Cozumel and St. Lucia and stuff, the water's cold. But it is what it is. So you take what you can get sometimes. So, but it's a nice job to go into every day. It's not Club Med, but it's still a really nice environment to deal with divers every day and stuff. So.
Yeah. And if you like the smell of neoprene, well, hey, a lot of people do. I don't, but a lot of people do. Okay.
There you go.
Okay, question. Of all the seasons you did, do you have one where, if it might be your first season, that would you describe one as magical, or would you just say that you like them all for different reasons, or is there one that stood out above all the others and that was your magical one?
Well, again, they all definitely, people always ask me that in general, which village did you like the most and things like that. Even when we were working in the club, that was a general question GMs would ask us at dinner or lunch. They definitely all had their pluses and minuses. I mean, I honestly am so glad that I did start in Sandpiper, because it was the easiest way to ease into Club Med culture, because we were still in Florida. And so if there was something that you didn't have or needed, you could still jump in a car and get there, because there was a few GOs that had cars in Sandpiper, because they were from the Miami area, and so they just drove up. And so that and if you will, it was just learning about Club Med, and like I said, the positive experience there. From there, Cancun was a whole different animal back then. It was pretty crazy, like turquoise, and it was like kind of one giant nightclub party for 6 months almost. St. Lucia was probably, if I had to pick one, as I was saying earlier, it was just because all around, I mean, we just had such a great time. The team was incredible. The GMs were incredible. The island was, and we really lived the life because we were fully isolated. I mean, back then we had phone banks where it was like $20 a minute. So you really didn't call anybody. I think we got mail about every 2 or 3 weeks. So you didn't get any mail or anything. So, I mean, I remember we honestly didn't remember that the Iraq War, I think it was the Iraq War. Yeah. The Iraq War started with the US in 91 or 90.
Yeah, that's right.
We didn't know that it had started for a week or two afterwards. And we only learned about it from guests.
That's right.
We had no TVs, no phones, nothing, right? So there was no cell phones or anything like that, no computers, no laptops. So if you will, it was kind of old school back then. Eleuthera was a beautiful island too. I mean, I'm sad that Eleuthera is no longer a Club Med. It's no longer there, because the beach was gorgeous and the people were the locals who I worked a lot with there on the scuba boat and the snorkeling boat. They were just amazing.
Wow. Okay. No, that's a very good answer. Did you ever find that when you got like a package from a GM was like some big status symbol? Did you ever get like packages sent to you from guests who were like happy, they had a good time with you? And
I did, honestly. It was mostly from St. Lucia, because I'd been working with the kids so much. And especially there was weeks where, if you will, the whole mini club was women, GOs, and myself.
Poor guy. Okay.
Yeah. I didn't complain a lot. Let's put it that way.
Nor should you.
But so I got to know a lot of the kids pretty well. I mean, there was a couple weeks too where we had teenagers, and I remember Pierre coming up to me saying, normally you work with all the groups, but this week I just need you to work with the teenagers, because the ladies don't know what to do with them. And we in St. Lucia, the mini club GOs, a lot were either European or they're French Canadian. And so, and then the teenagers that we have, and mostly like 12, 13, 14, 15, were American kids. And so they didn't know how to deal with these kids. And I had coached hockey and baseball when I was growing up too, and stuff like that. So if you will, I was very comfortable with kids. And so, so I took over with them, and back then there was definitely no tipping allowed. Right. And so when we would do departures, we'd all stand there and clap and watch the people get on the bus. And like the first time it happened, I was standing across from Pierre, right at the front of the line. And the dad and mom came up to me and handed me $100 bill. And so, every part of me wants to take it, because, I have no money, right?
Yeah, it's almost a
we
month's.
got paid nothing.
Yeah, it's almost a month's salary. Come on.
Right. So I wanted to take it. And so I just looked at Pierre and I said, I'm sorry, sir. There's no tipping in Club Med. I can't take it. And they were from New York. I remember that. And they just made a big scene about it. And finally, Pierre crossed the line over to me and goes, look, just take it already. Put it in your pocket. He's like, you're making a scene. And I'm like, all right. And I fully expected him to come up after when it ended the departure and say, okay, give me that money. And he didn't. He goes, he just came up to me. He goes, obviously you're doing a great job. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So, from there, honestly, there was another little girl and her brother, and they were from England. And I got a nice letter from them. Nothing in it, but just a nice letter from them that really made me feel good, because it said, if you ever leave Club Med and you want to see England, we would love to have you come over and either au pair for us for the kids or just stay with us for a week or two. And I was like, wow. So that was that just just made me feel really good, kind of thing, that I'd made an impact so much on another family. So
I'll say it's a great story.
Yeah. Oh, so I've got a good story for you. I just thought of one. It's kind of unique.
Okay, good.
So again, going back to St. Lucia, I was dating a girl in St. Lucia, another G.O, who was a hostess. And so every now and then the hostesses used to have to work late, and because of the nightclub. So I would stay up late because she was afraid to walk back to the barracks, we called them, where we lived. Because it was pretty dark. And so I was staying up late, and we got a buzz from the gate or the airport or somebody that we had a late arrival. And it's like 1 a.m. And so I'm like, okay. And the woman I was dating, her name was Sarah. Sarah says, I'm going to need help with this arrival. And it was close to 2:00, I want to say. And so, okay, I said, no worries, we'll do it. And don't have to call anybody else. And it was one family. And so we went up there, and a real nice family. They had 3 kids and everything like that. Just a ton of luggage. And so, and of course they were staying on, like, I don't know, the third, I think there was 3 floors in those buildings back then. The 3rd floor, they were staying on the top. There was no elevators. I had to hump it up the stairs while Sarah took them to the room. So I was talking to the father, and I didn't recognize him. And I said to him, we're just, I don't know, we were talking about everything and anything. And I said to him, so what do you do for a living? And he said, oh, I'm a hockey coach. And I said, oh, really? I told him I played hockey and stuff like that. And I forget who they lost to, but the Bruins lost to somebody in the Stanley Cup that year. I don't remember who beat them. But anyways, I said, that was one heck of a Stanley Cup, wasn't it? I mean, I said, I didn't get to see it, but I heard about it from some of the guests and everything like that were down here. And he just gave me the dirtiest look and kind of walked away from me. And his wife came up to me and she said, she looked at me so nicely, put her hand on my shoulder and said, "Hun, I know you don't know who we are, but just so you know, we're the Milburys. His name is Mike. He's the head coach of the Boston Bruins. And we just lost the Stanley Cup like 2 nights ago."
Oh, man.
Yeah. I was like, oh God. And I said, what should I do? And she said, don't say anything to him tonight. And then the funny thing is they were there for 2 weeks, at least, I want to say, or 3 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. They were there for a while. But yeah, we got, again, because I was doing stuff with the kids. We had go-kart track in St. Lucia too, which was by far the most fun thing in the world. And so I got to know his kids and stuff like that. So yeah, so he let me slide on it. He gave me a couple jabs about it, but he's like, yeah, that probably wasn't the best thing to say to me that night. And I'm like, yeah, no, probably not. So well, this is not really a funny story, but
no, this is probably because since you're a big hockey guy, but since you're so cut off from news and information and Club Med, like if you were back home, you would have known, right? I mean,
oh yeah, definitely. Yeah. Because those 3 years I was out of the country, if you will, I lost track of everything. It's kind of like, you left the planet almost back then. So you didn't know what was going on at home.
What year around did you stop?
The end of 91.
Okay.
Yeah. So all of 89, 90, and most of 91. So yeah, it was a different time back then, I guess.
Yeah.
But like I said, to this day, though, I probably keep in touch regularly with I'd say at least 20 GOs that I worked with through multiple seasons and different villages and stuff like that. To this day, we're still really good friends. Heck, before COVID, one of the last concerts I saw was Aerosmith in Las Vegas. And it was Hio, myself, who else was there? Sharon, who was a mini club GO that I worked with in a couple of villages. And yeah, I mean, a couple of us that just all out of the blue said, let's go to Vegas, and just all met up there. So.
Yeah, well, because of what happens in Vegas, stays in Vegas, I can't ask you about any of that. But you and Hio, Joel Kirby in Vegas must have been something.
We had a good time. Yeah, it was. Even as old men, we still had a good time.
Yeah, you probably had some left in the tank a little bit there, you know.
Well, you know what? I have an age, but if you will, my brain still thinks I'm 21. So, that's right. And my wife says I act like I'm 12 sometimes. So.
Well, Scott, man, I really do appreciate you coming on and sharing your story with us. I can't thank you enough.
Yeah, no problem. It's been a pleasure. I don't think we ever crossed paths, Greg.
No, but you're always, I always heard, you're one of those names that I always heard about, you know, like from the past, you know, so yeah. I'm glad we finally got a chance to meet up, and maybe when all this craziness is over, we'll go to an XGO reunion or something.
I definitely think so. I mean, we have so many common friends. It's not even funny.
Yeah.
Right?
I think we have about 20 mutual friends, I think.
At least. And so, yeah, I definitely think we'll have to catch up together at an XGO. So,
all right, everyone, that was from the beautiful state of Arizona, Mr. Scott Richmond, and we'll see you all next week. Bye. Say bye, Scott.
Bye-bye.